Hi, Chris Duff over at Serious Land Capital, vacant land funding partner. Today wanted to go over, I think, a pretty relevant topic, you know, about a number of things that I've kind of routinely commented on recently, status of the macro economy and how to navigate continuing to build your business and being an entrepreneur and, volatile macro and who knows what's going on. And to be able to separate out the data from whatever political opinions you may or may not have. So I know obviously that can be a touchy topic, and I'm not a particularly politically minded person, but I was just reminded of this a bit because I was actually doing a radio guest spot. That's the first time on an AM station yesterday. First time I've done one of those, and I was kind of going over my business and trying to provide as much value and so forth. And they're asking like, how do you adjust your underwriting and so forth. And I got into a response that was mentioning, since we had entered the land space, a little bit before COVID. I mean, it's been a twisty-turvy market, to say the least, with a lot of significant changes spread over like a 5-ish year period where we went from really nasty downturn for a few months during those early months of COVID. Then it turned into and it was like a kind of greatest combination of buyers and sellers market at the same time. Like, a lot of people were flush with cash, and again, but we were getting started then, got a lot of mistakes out of the way. But I really wish we knew what we knew now and could have gone after way larger deals, and it would just been even easier to make bigger returns in a market like that. But what can you do? We're here now. You adjust as needed. But it went from like buyers to heavy sellers market, and then back to a mostly buyer's market in many parts of the country by like mid 2022, with the interest rates getting a lot higher. And it's been kind of settled into that buyer's market in a lot of parts of the country, particularly like those hot flipping areas that COVID really spurred. And it got a lot more difficult to start selling into those markets. Not always, again, but just general trend. And then I thought there was another mini bull run between roughly mid-November of last year to mid-January of this year. We offloaded a whole bunch of portfolios, same with a bunch of other land investors and real estate in general. I mean, just look at the market caps of the bigger builders and the crashes they've had since then. And now I think it's like a very difficult market overall, not everywhere, since the start of April and, these ongoing tariff and trade war situation and so forth. And so, when I was going through this response, like, it's just on like how to navigate the actual economy here. I tried to remove as much opinion as possible and just stick with the data and how we adjust underwriting depending on what our end buyers might be considering. And the hosts with the program, it's their show and everything, but they could kind of tell like they wanted to kind of gently move away from that topic after, which is like no problem on that side. But to me, it just got me thinking a little bit more where we as entrepreneurs and business owners, like, you can't afford to get trapped into opinion cycles or avoid certain topics just because of how hot those topics might be from like an online perspective, or just general sentiment around the country, or difficult conversations, what have you. Whereas to me, it's just like, okay, regardless of what's going on, regardless of what my opinion is politically or what I think of the decisions, I just have to operate based on the circumstances at hand. That's all I can do. I can't control anything else, but I keep my ear very close to the floor in all of the local markets that we're in. and try to get news from a number of different sources so that we can make the most informed opinions possible. Because and if you have the sense that these greater powers that be actually are controlling the results that you can get, then you're just putting power into somebody else's hands. But if you understand that, hey, you can still get results. It might be harder in certain economies to still succeed, but to make your success unconditional, regardless of whatever extenuating circumstances there are. To me, that is always the North Star that we should be heading toward as entrepreneurs here. So that was the distinction that I was just like kind of keeping in mind. It's like, okay, anything that even smells like remotely like political oriented topics, like, oh, well, we can't really discuss that. And so like you notice I'm not necessarily saying anything about the parties or anything. I'm just talking about the data. I'm talking about what we're seeing, consumer sentiment, how troublesome it is to move some properties that we weren't having much trouble with a few months ago, and how we're adjusting our strategy to account for that. And if things shift again, boom, we move on. It doesn't really matter. It's just about staying as unbiased as possible when it comes to the actual data and just making decisions and adapting therein. And we've seen so many different market shifts over the past 5 years, regardless of who's in charge or what's going on in the economy. I don't know. I can't control all that. No one can. No one person can. And, we still find a way to succeed. And I think I have even a better sense of that, especially because we operate nationally here, red state, blue state, purple state, doesn't matter. We operate in all of them and find success in all of them, and also find difficulties in all of them too. So it's, we don't blame any of those, political undercurrents for how our business is performing. Like ultimately that comes back to us and how quickly or not so quickly that we can adjust and still find a way to kind of like stabilize, survive and thrive, or just, continue to thrive. Ideally, that's just kind of the name of the game here. And I mean, just look at how many people that, if their preferred political party gets elected, for instance, you can get biased either way, right? Then all of a sudden you might have misleading thoughts in terms of being more optimistic about taking certain pathways or decision making within your own business or your own investing, whatever you're doing, when in reality the data is showing, hey, this is actually shakier than what you actually might be trying to believe or really want to believe. And on the flip side, if your preferred party is not elected and you're just like way too defensive and thinking, hey, I can't get anything done because, this person or these people are just ruining everything. And so I'm just like going to bury my head in the sand and just wait. I'm just going to wait for things to change and not try to adapt to what's still in my control. And, that can be just as damaging as well, because, again, you might be misinterpreting some of the data and realize that you still can succeed no matter what anyway. So, I just think this message needs to be shared more routinely here, and, to realize that it's usually more of a mix. It's less polarized when you even look around the country and look at red states or blue states and what have you, and how evenly the country is really split at any given time, or even take a state by state basis. I'm from as blue a state as possible, grew up in Illinois, moved to Texas, which is, quote unquote a red state. But, if you look at actual voter breakdowns and so forth, it's usually, or it has been more recently, maybe a 52 to 48 in terms of, favoring, red candidates. But, just consider that for a moment. Let's say you had, 100 people representing those, percentage points within that state, and 52 people were wearing a red shirt, 48 people were wearing a blue shirt. Let's say you just mix them all up and you put them in front of you. And if you were just looking at that, you'd probably have to think really carefully. It's not obvious that it's a red state, right? It's oh, wait a second. It's a really even mix. I think I'm going to have to actually count each person individually before I give my answer, because it looks basically half and half. So I think that's an important reminder to understand that, again, things are not as black and white as they seem, and there's multiple different forces and opinions and competing interests going on at any given time. And if you don't understand how to work with those circumstances as they come up and adjust with the winds, control what you can control, and just try to be as unbiased as you can about the underlying data when it comes to actually growing your business, you're just inevitably going to falter, or just get distracted and not focus on what's actually driving the needle forward. So I just wanted to share that sentiment, especially again, because I think we have a very good sense, having operated less geographically focused, seeing kind of national exposure and having a lot of different inputs coming in to where we're actually getting our data from. And again, even within our portfolio, yeah, there are definitely some that I'm like, just as I commented yesterday, maybe a couple of days ago, just like max dispo focus, figure out the right problem. And some other ones are really performing well. Like one we literally just closed on less than a week ago and listed less than 2 days ago. Already is going under contract, full price cash offer, 3x what we put into the deal. Couldn't be a better result, right? But like this was also one that I like double and triple checked with the broker on the status of that local economy. He said, yeah, things are still flying off the shelves here. People are still moving on deals. Plus it wasn't that expensive a deal, $60K buy. It's not huge, but it's still a nice return here. So, like we are obviously concerned about some of the properties that are not moving as much for us, but we're still putting stuff under contract as well. We're still investing in properties. I'm doing some other transactional deals as well too in the meantime. And, still our underwriting is tightened up more so than it was before. But, clearly we're still showing we can perform and adjust our criteria to operate in whatever environment. And again, that's always the goal, find a way to succeed no matter what. So if you were looking for funding, seriousland.capital for zero cost review of your land deals, land daily diligence, Facebook group, check it out. I'll be on live later today. And landpricer.ai, I'm about to get on a meeting with my development team, again, trying to get the new product launched before end of June here. Take care, subscribe and share. Talk to you next time. Bye.